MASH 477? My favorite show. Let's put a happy face on your real sheet. Fabulous TV show. Yeah. You like MASH? I don't even watch the show anymore. Back from the 70s and early 80s. It's on reruns. Great show. Still holds the record for the most watched finale of any series ever. Still MASH. Amazing. Yeah, one of my absolute favorites. Definitely the top. Yeah. MASH.
What are you going for?
No, I was trying to think about that. Maybe the new Battlestar Galactica, that was up there. That's one of the great series of all time.
Yes.
Deadwood probably would be up there. Maybe Rome, although it was short, it was so good. All right. If you have a marker, what I want you to do is I want you to come to the board, and I want you to write on the board, just as best you can, some example of commerce. Some example of something you think Congress, or anyone has thought Congress can make rules about. Take a moment, let's see what you come up with. What is commerce? It can be as general or as specific as you want. Let's see what you come up with and hand your marker off to somebody else. I'm just curious as to what you think after all that you've heard. What is that? What is commerce? Give me an example. Be it specific, and I'm sure I'll erase a bunch of them.
I don't want it.
What is commerce include? Power to make rules about what? Congress has the power to make laws regulating commerce. What does the word mean?
Mary Jane. Hey, there you go.
Be as general or as specific as you like. Thoughts and bonds. Good. That's good. Driving laws. Good. Okay. Anything. Just pick anything. Okay. Good. Prostitution. That works. What do you mean? They really have this power. Put a bunch of stuff up there. Foreign trade. Okay.
Pretty much anything can be regulated, though.
Pick something.
Abortion.
You can pick a topic, you can pick an industry, you can pick a method like buying and selling, or transportation, or...
Okay, I'll go put healthcare up there.
Okay, food,
Right?
good.
I'm sorry.
Hand that marker off to somebody. I want more stuff up there.
Don't take mine.
This is a hard word.
Don't take mine.
Maybe they can regulate broadcasting. Maybe they can regulate, I don't know,
Don't they try?
healthcare or something. All sorts of stuff. Take a moment. Take a moment. What can they regulate? Now, all of these might not be what they actually do regulate, but, you know, what can they regulate? I can see markers up there. Grab a marker. Then you can write a little note, a little happy face, if you want.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's
Right?
pretty broad. That's why I was like, man, what?
Anything they want. Whatever comes up.
Well, if they pass healthcare, that's really anything they want.
All right.
Did you give this back to him?
Well, I left it up there.
Passing around the room isn't working? All right. Let me add some more stuff up here. Trade between states. Let me just put up some general terms.
Anything they want.
Certainly buying and selling, or what we know as trade.
Water
Perhaps.
restrictions. There you go.
And again, a lot of these are good. Manufacturing. So how the goods will be made or manufactured. Transportation.
Border law.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So look,
Transportation.
now, food, certainly, we could think about food safety. We could think about the meat inspectors. I mean, there's all sorts of, we can be as specific or as broad as we want. There's a lot of things that the federal government, cars, prostitution, anything they want. Certainly, you'll see the word economy mentioned, that it has to have some effect on the economy. So whatever it is has to have something to do with buying and selling something or something for profit.
Immigration. They regulate all that.
Broadcasting, stocks and bonds, electricity, absolutely. Our job, as with marijuana, of course, you have the Gonzales v. Wright case, and so on. Our job is to figure out, again, I'm going to say this over and over again because it's important, is trying to mark the line between the federal and state governments. All of these things are important. You have to have laws about all of these things, certainly. How many laws you have to have, or which laws you have to have, we can debate about. But certainly, these are all things that should be regulated to some degree or another. The question is, so you should write down, who should do the regulating? There's one question I like to ask. Should the states do it? Or should the federal government do it? That's question one. A lot of times, both of them will do it. Question two is, what should the regulations be? That's more of the policy question. So if you're going to regulate prostitution, what should the laws be? Well, we could make it illegal completely. Okay, or we could make it legal and make prostitutes get health exams every year. Do that. Limit where they can advertise, where they can be. I mean, so there's lots of, in Nevada, for example, at least outside the city limits of Las Vegas, you can drive out 60 miles out to the bunny ranch. Come on, Paul. And I'm not there. But and you can go to, there's a brothel. There's several brothels in Vegas, but the two big ones are the chicken ranch and the bunny ranch. I think MTV or some HBO, someone had a TV show about one of them. I forget which one it was. Anyway, but in Las Vegas it's illegal technically, although you can always get escorted to prostitutes. But technically it's illegal. We could legalize it. I mean, Congress could make a law. It depends. Or you could leave that to the states. And some states would probably legalize it. I'm sure Nevada would be among them, like they have. In some states, I'm sure in Texas, it would remain illegal. So all of these things, what is the reach of the federal government? That's one question. And again, I'll write this on the board because I think it's important. Again, you have the policy question versus the constitutional question. If I do anything in this class other than just make you suffer in pain and anguish, I want you to come out realizing that the Constitution is important and we should at least think about what it means. We can disagree about what it means, but we should at least think about it. I don't want you to have, if there's one view I will not tolerate, it will be the view that doesn't matter what the Constitution says. I don't like it. I will mock you. Now, not all progressives have that view. A few of them do, though, and I mock them. If you want to say that, well, the Commerce Clause is broad and applies to almost, I can respect that to a certain degree, absolutely. At least you're looking at the Constitution and at least making it part of the conversation, but don't tell me it doesn't mean anything. Don't tell me it's irrelevant. Don't live in some tyranny if you want to do that. I don't have time for that. We live in a constitutional republic. We have a constitution. It matters what it says. Okay. So that's my intolerance moment today. Now good. Now that's commerce, so difficult. Gibbons v. Ogden, once again. Somebody impress me and tell me what that case said. Gibbons versus Ogden. What is that case? What are the facts of that case?
Licensing of the steam.
Right. Go ahead. Go ahead. What was that case about?
They told New York you can't limit driving through the waters.
Who told New York that? Go back to your notes, or go to the actual case, it's right up here.
Was the New York statute?
New York had a law. What were they doing?
They were trying to give exclusive rights to certain people to navigate steamboats in the state waterways.
Exactly right. They were giving exclusive privileges to people who had gotten a specific license to operate their boats in New York. Someone who didn't have that license, but who had been granted permission to sail all around the Atlantic, complained. Ogden was trying to put Gibbons out of business, obviously. If you don't want competition, just make it illegal for the competition to be there at all. You can try that. Didn't work. The court ruled in favor, so I'm going to make a little chart here. Here's the federal government, here's the state government, here's the case Gibbons, which every first-year law student learns. Federal government won that battle. Check mark for that. Yay. The federal government doesn't always win this battle, but in this case they did. The court ruled in favor of the Commerce Clause allowing Congress to basically override what New York wanted. Okay. Now, the important passages I had named from that case, can somebody remind me, point us to a paragraph on one of the, I believe it starts on page 65, if you have the copy of the case. It's a long case, but the copies here are abridged. Someone give me an important paragraph. I'll give you a clue, the top of page 66. Okay? Some of you have that. If it were me and I were sitting there, I would probably have Taco Bell and not KFC, but that's just me. That's what I would probably have, but no. But I would highlight all the paragraph on the top of page 66. Because that might be a paragraph that might show up later on something. I will exam. Well, he says the subject to be regulated is commerce. And we have to ascertain the extent of its power. Now, some people want to limit it to buying and selling, or to trade, or to traffic. That's all they want to limit it to. But what the court says in this case, that it is intercourse. And the court says that includes navigation and transportation. Okay? So the court expands. What New York wanted to say is, Congress, you don't have any power to regulate transportation of goods. That's a state issue. And if we want to prohibit goods from being transported in our state, we get to do it. That's what New York wants to say. And we'll give it our licenses to whomever we want. No, you can't do that, the court says. I don't think so. The regulation of commerce includes transportation. That's a big deal. So any other state that had laws like this trying to restrict trade, those would have been struck down. That's a big deal. That's a big blow to the states. Okay, so Gibbons, round one for the federal government. Okay. This is an 1824 case, by the way. Now, Gibbons does say in the third paragraph of page 66, okay, third paragraph of page 66, it does say that the completely internal commerce of a state is reserved for the state. It does say that, okay? So it acknowledges that there are limits to the Commerce Clause. Gibbons does not say that Congress can do anything it wants. This is what the Chermininsky guy wants to say, the guy from the video last time. This is probably what President Obama would want to say. Right or wrong. That's what he'd want to say, I think. He can have broad authority to do anything. That's not what Gibbons says. Gibbons says if it's a purely local concern to that state, it should be reserved for that state.
Can you close that?
Can I close?
That's
Oh, I'm sorry. The completely internal commerce of a state is reserved. Now, somebody impress me. Where's my roll sheet?
Oh, we need it back there.
will happy face on the line to the first person who tells me this answer. Where in the Constitution does it say that if the U.S. government doesn't have the power to do something, that the states get to do it? Where does it say that?
Article 1, Section 8.
Article 1, Section 8 gives us the list of things the U.S. government can do. But if it isn't on that list, the Constitution says someplace that if it isn't on that list, then the states have that power. It's reserved to the states. Where in the Constitution does it say that? Thank you. The 10th Amendment. Happy face for you. Now, I'm one of the few people, not few people, but I'm one of the people who actually, I think, takes the 10th Amendment seriously. The 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says, let's bring it up. This is something, of course, you should know. Federalism depends on the 10th Amendment, of course. In fact, there's an entire 10th Amendment center we can go to. Let's go hang out there. These people, let's see, where they have the Constitution every time.
The original stuff.
Who are these people? Okay. I wanted to see if I thought they have the 10th Amendment listed somewhere.
What's that, NDAA?
So what?
Go down, scroll down. Stop the NDAA.
The National Defense Authorization Act, I believe. Anyway, I'll just refer to the 10th Amendment. Here we go, 10th Amendment. Make sure you write this down. Powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. If it's not delegated to the United States, that's Article 1, Section 8, by the way, then the states get to do it. That's what it says. Unfortunately, not everyone agrees. Let me bring up one of my favorite videos. I show it usually at 23:02, but since I'm sure none of you will take me again, I better show it to you now. You come back for some more pain. Many of the assignments are the same. I will select. Anyway, let's see. Where was I going to? One moment here. Did you guys sign up for spring classes yet? When does that happen?
The main message?
Yeah, no, that's spring class. When fall? When does the fall sign up start? When is that? Next month? You guys have done summer already, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not teaching this. Let's see.
I'm gonna get stuck here with daily 1, 2, and 3.
Thomas calls it up, is that what you're?
No, it's a different one. Oh, here it is. Let me bring up this video. Let's do a quick political journal. Excellent. Political journal. Which political journal is that? This is an old conversation, but it's a classic. I'll bring it up. I love this.
Responding to a caller who asked him about it on a Republican governor's conference call last night, here's what Governor Pawlenty said, quote.
So, let me set it up for you. This is a couple years ago. Governor Pawlenty was being asked about the constitutionality of the health care bill that they were trying to pass. And this is what he said. So, give me a column. Give me one for Pawlenty if you want. That's the guy we're going to quote from, and then the interviewer. And then you'll see a couple of scary people, and one of them looks scary anyway. It's pretty funny. Let's see what happens.
Depending on what the federal government comes out with here,
Okay, he's talking about the health care bill. Asserting the 10th Amendment might be a viable option. Okay.
asserting the 10th Amendment might be a viable option. We can't really even get the president to outline what he does or doesn't support in any detail, so we'll have to see. I'd say that's a possibility. If you're a little rusty on the Constitution, here's what the 10th Amendment says. Quote,
Thank you.
Powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
All right, there's the 10th Amendment. The government doesn't say the government can do it, then the states get to do it. Healthcare not in the Constitution, so maybe the states get to do it. Okay, we're kind of laying out the argument. Okay, let's see how MSNBC's David Schuster handles this question.
The one little problem with the argument from the tenthers, as they like to call it, is that...
Okay, let's begin by sounding like a dick. Okay, we can do that. Let's try that again.
The argument from the tenthers, as they like to call it, is this other part of the Constitution that's called Article 1, Article 1, quote,
Yeah.
The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, to pay the debts, and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. That means it unambiguously authorizes Congress to spend money in ways that benefit the nation,
Unambiguously. General welfare must mean the Congress can spend money on anything they want to benefit the nation. Okay, unambiguously. So we've got the sort of broad, this is a great video actually, because we got the example of the progressive taking the broad view of a particular clause. But then watch what he says about the 10th Amendment. This is my favorite part. Let's see what he says here. David?
Social Security, Medicare, Veterans Care, etc., etc. So what are the tenthers really up to?
What are the tenthers really up to? Let's take them out back, beat the crap out of them, shall we? No?
Here to face off are Democratic strategist Karen Finney and Republican strategist Ron Christie. Ron, most responding to a caller who asked to spend money in ways that benefit the nation, So what are the tenthers, Karen Finney and Republican strategist Ron Christie? Ron...
Did they give Ron a bunch of cocaine before the interview? Because he does not look well. Just a side. She looks very good, but Ron's not.
Most people in their right thinking mind know that the 10th Amendment is a bunch of baloney, so what does Tim Pawlenty go...
What? The 10th Amendment is what?
What is Tim Pawlenty going for politically here? As people in their right thinking mind know that the 10th Amendment is a bunch of baloney, so what...
People in their right thinking mind know that the 10th Amendment is a bunch of baloney. See, this is the kind of crap that pisses me off. I mean, you want to talk about what the 10th Amendment means, you want to disagree about it, that's fine. Don't call a part of the Constitution a bunch of baloney because you don't like it. I don't get that. Why do people do that? Smart. This guy probably makes $500,000 a year. David Schuster, really famous MSNBC guy. And not everyone does this, but I don't understand that. Do you see my point? Let's talk about what it means. Let's discuss the rights of the states and the rights of we can disagree about that, but to simply take a part of the Constitution and just put a line through it and say we don't have to talk about it because it's stupid. Do we share my anger over this? Yes. What's going on here? Is it a bunch of baloney? No. Wrong answer. Is it a bunch of baloney?
I mean, it's there, so I mean, it serves a purpose.
Of course it serves a purpose, right? Am I out of my mind here?
No, it's in the
You
Constitution.
see my criticism?
Yeah.
We can disagree about what it means. I'm fine with that. Let's talk about what the states can do with it. Let's talk about the General Welfare Clause and commerce. I'm fine with that. But this is the kind of argument that pisses me off. I don't have any toleration for people who start. Back to the commerce clause. That's fine. Anyway, back to okay. Go to the bottom of page 66 in Gibbons. And again, people misquote Gibbons all the time. Look at what he says at the bottom of 66. We are now arrived at the inquiry. What is this power? This power to regulate commerce. What is it? It is the power to regulate. That is, the power to prescribe the rule or the laws, what you can and can't do, by which commerce is to be governed. This power, like all the others vested in Congress, where are the powers of Congress in the Constitution?
Section 8.
Article 1, Section 8.
Yes, exactly right. Article 1, Section 8. Oh, you're going to start knowing this like the back of your hand, I hope. You can start whipping out the Constitution on your friends. Throwing a little Constitution smack down now. No. That's fine.
Did
Okay.
you see that?
This power is complete and may be exercised to its utmost extent. Okay, sounds like big commerce, but wait a minute. And acknowledges no limitations other than are prescribed in the Constitution. So the Constitution will still set the limits. It is still limited. Okay. Anyway, the federal government wins this round. Let's go to the next case. Hammer versus Dagenhart. Hammer versus Dagenhart. Let me tell you what happened. I think I told you last time. The Keating-Owen Child Labor Act wanted to prohibit the interstate commerce of goods produced by child labor. Okay? So you're a company and you're going to use child labor, you don't get to sell your goods across state lines. Well, obviously, if I'm a company, and of course child labor is kind of a vague term, how young are we talking about? It doesn't seem totally unacceptable to have 14 and 15-year-olds working, doing certain things. I mean, maybe for a few hours a day, how many hours? Certainly there's a lot of time after school. I don't want to see 10-year-olds sewing together soccer balls with their teeth. No, I'm not talking about that. That's clearly unacceptable. But, in a ninth grader or even an eighth grader, there's certain jobs middle school students can do, right? Put the caterer at CVS, right? Nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. Or they can go work at the bowling alley or something. Why do you got to be 16 anyway? But
really
fine.
18.
Is it 18? Is it not 16?
Well, it is, but now it's pretty hard to get a job. 'Cause I was trying to get
Oh,
a
is it?
job since
Sorry,
I was
at
like
16.
15. Cause
Oh.
it's really 15, but no one wants to give me a job until you're like 17 to 18.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's a lower
Yeah.
wage you can pay. I know that under 18 you get paid a lower wage anyway. But anyway, so the question was, can Congress have this rule that prohibits the trading of goods from factories using child labor? What do you think the court said? Yes, Congress has this power, or no, they don't?
Yes.
Who thinks yes? Raise your hands high. Everyone raising their hands didn't read the case, so that's all. No, they said no. Congress doesn't have this power. This round, Hammer versus Dagenhart, this round went to the states. This was one of those rare moments where the court said, no, Congress, you're starting to go too far. Does this mean Congress wants child labor? Or the court wants child labor? Well, no.
But wouldn't that be considered like general work? Well, I guess not.
Well, it could be, not to the court, First of all the court's saying is, look, the states can have child labor laws if they want to. Texas can decide how old you have to be. What the court was saying in Dagenhart was, the federal government doesn't have that power. That's all. It's a battle between the federal government and the states. Now, maybe you don't like child labor. Maybe you think that children in Texas shouldn't ever work jobs before they're, 16. Well, then on the more conservative view, you could elect people to serve in the legislature, and they'll make laws just like that, and then you can decide. Or on the more libertarian view,
Do
I
you
guess.
think if healthcare is repealed, that there will be like a constitutional amendment prohibiting the government from doing that?
If it's repealed or if it's upheld?
If it's repealed.
Well, if it's repealed, then you're asking whether there'd be an amendment to say give Congress the power.
Not to give it, but to not give the Congress that power.
Well, if it's repealed, then it's saying that Congress doesn't have that power.
Okay.
Right. Now, if it's upheld, they could try that. That would never work. And then that never happens. If it's upheld, it's going to be the way things are. Unless the Republicans somehow get 60 votes, 60 seats in the Senate, which they could, but I think they'll get a few, but they have 47 right now, 63. They might get 4 or 5 seats, but you'd have to have 60 votes in the Senate to be able to get a repeal through, even if Romney were president. Okay, so what did the court say? Well, look at the first paragraph here on Dagenhart. this said that Congress exceeded its commerce power by prohibiting the interstate transportation of factories that use child labor. So Congress had gone too far. Now again, it's possible for Congress to want to do something that's good, but it just be unconstitutional. It's beyond their power. That's where I think people get confused. I think people think if Congress is doing something good, we should let them do it. But there is supposed to be a difference in the power of the federal government and the states. Because if you let them do this good thing this time, you've now given them the power to perhaps do all sorts of other things down the road, which may not be so good. Let's say you love this healthcare bill. You love this healthcare bill. You want everyone to have to buy health insurance, and you want. Well, Congress could use that same argument. I think this is right to mandate exercise, like I said before. Do you want that too? Maybe you do. Some people did. I had some classes who thought, yeah, maybe they'll exercise. But at what point are you going to limit their power? Remember, Federalist 48, Congress is like an impetuous vortex. They want more and more power because they want to do more and more things. Well, this isn't always necessarily good. Okay. Jump to the next page then. The regulatory of Congress is ample, but the production of articles, the actual making of them, the factories, those are matters of local regulation. Please underline that. I'm at the top of page 74. Second page of the Dagenhart decision. It is a matter of local regulation. You have to leave it to the local governments and the states to decide what are the rules going to be for how your factory operates. Are you going to, if you run a retail store, you're going to how many hours are you going to require people to work? What sort of safety equipment do they have to wear? All of these rules that we have for factories, this case says, should be left to the states. Now, that means, of course, that some states may not do a very good job. Maybe in some states there are unsafe working conditions. My advice to you, don't work there. Right? And that's my first advice. If you're a steel worker and you're working in a state where there are no worker safety regulations, you might want to move. Now, not always so easy to do that, but I'm just saying. Maybe if there's a state where it's safer conditions, they will attract better workers. So that's the more libertarian or more conservative way to go at this problem. The more progressive way or liberal way is to just make rules for everybody. So there are no unsafe working conditions anywhere. Don't leave it to the states, because the states may not do a very good job. Okay. The third paragraph there on page 74. There is no power vested in Congress to require the states to exercise their police power so as to prevent possible unfair competition.
Bless you.
There is no power vested in Congress. Okay? Many causes may cooperate to give one state an economic advantage over others. The Commerce Clause was not intended to give Congress a general authority to equalize such conditions. For example, in some states, laws have been passed fixing minimum wages for women. Skip that example right there. So let's say that you think that women should be able to make a certain minimum wage. You could leave that decision up to the states and let them decide. And some states might require a fair wage. Other states might say, you know what, let the companies decide and let them pay whatever they want, because that's the right of businesses, they can do that. The court is saying that that kind of decision should be left to the states. What else? In other states, there's local law that regulates the hours of labor of women in various employments. Some states did not think it was right to have women working over a certain amount of hours per day, 10 or 12 hours. there were laws put in place. Men are a bit stronger, they thought. Men can certainly, their bodies can put up with more. So if you want to work your men 12, 14 hours, that's fine. But for women, you're limited. You can't ask them to work that much. Okay, that seems reasonable on the face of it, to a certain degree, although some of you might disagree. But anyway, whatever you think about that policy, the states were the ones that would decide. Okay? And in this case, if you know anything about Hammer versus Dagenhart, you should know that in this case, the states won. It limited what Congress could do. Now, there was a dissent in this case, so let me read that to you. A dissent, of course, in a Supreme Court case is when the judges who did not agree with the decision of the court, they write their own opinion. And this dissent by Holmes is very, very famous, so you should underline Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes' very famous dissent in Dagenhart. You'll hear it referred to all the time. Holmes says, and he's a progressive, along with Brandeis and Clark, he says, I cannot doubt that the regulation may prohibit any part of such commerce that Congress sees fit to forbid. So see, Holmes has taken the broad view of commerce. Okay? The broad view. The Act does not meddle with anything belonging to the states, but when they seek to send their products across state lines, they are no longer within their rights. Okay? And he says that under the Constitution, such commerce belongs to Congress to regulate. It may carry out its views of public policy, whatever indirect they may have on the activities of the states. The national welfare, as understood by Congress, may require a different attitude than that of some self-seeking state. Selfish states, the Congress can, on the basis of the welfare of the nation, can make those states do things.
Thank you.
Let me see where the room is on some of these questions. I used to work in Iraq, I think I told you, and in the building I was in, it was across, they were building these high-rises. No safety equipment of any kind. No helmets, no rails. No one died when I was there, but there was no safety equipment of any kind. This was not a construction site that you'd be allowed to have in Texas. Right. Now, just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you think that a construction worker should have to buy his own helmet in order to work. Or, the other view, is that you think that the construction company should provide the helmet at free of charge. So let me ask it again. How many people think if you're a construction worker, it's okay you have to buy your own helmet? That the company should not be forced to buy that for you?
That's like me having to.
Okay, a few of you. Okay. How many of you think the company should have to buy that particular piece of safety equipment for its workers? That this should be a law. That's what you're saying. Why can't the worker afford to buy his own helmet?
Well, I'm sure he could, but shouldn't the employers provide the safety equipment necessary to complete the job?
Yeah, why do you think that? That's interesting. Why do you think the employer should have to do that?
Are they required to wear it, or are they not? Is it just like you can wear it if you buy it, or if you don't buy it?
Well, I mean, it could be. Let's say you're required to wear it. Let's say that in order to do that job, the law says you have to be wearing a helmet. But the employer doesn't want to pay for the helmet. He wants you to pay for it, and you don't like that. Go do something else, I guess, would be the argument. So what do you think?
I think if the employer is telling you have to wear this, then.
Well, the law is telling him that. It's not the employer so much. He doesn't care as much. The law is requiring. If you're going to be on the site, you have to have.
I think that is actually a law.
I think it is a law.
It is a law.
It's a law. The laws vary. I don't know all the specifics. I'm sure there are some sites that you don't need helmets. Some sites you do, but a certain kind of work.
For roofing, I know for sure. Yeah.
How about police officers having to buy their own guns? Anyone think that be the way it is? And I assume police officers don't buy their own gun, but you might think about this.
You have
These
to
questions.
regulate that. If officer just has a bunch of different guns,
Bring whatever he wants to work.
Well, that, like, if there is a shootout, you gotta know, whose gun was what, and, you have to keep it on record. So
Sure.
that's a little bit different than just.
I mean, we
politics.
could make it so you make the officer buy his own gun, but he has to register with the department, so we know, hey, that's the one he carries. You could do that.
Yeah.
But, should the construction site have to buy long jeans for its workers?
No,
Because those are certainly safer than wearing shorts.
I think that's personal responsibility.
That's
for
more
workers.
personal responsibility. But maybe the helmet we're not sure about. So
Well,
I
and
mean,
the
there's all
helmet,
these
I think, should
questions.
be.
Maybe
I
it
mean,
is.
if you wanna protect yourself, do it.
I've worked for construction
Okay,
companies
good.
that
That's
you have
good.
to wear steel toe boots.
That's what I was just fixing to
Okay.
say.
And you have to purchase your own.
Those are
But
expensive, right?
they're expensive, but they have agreements with certain companies
You get
to get a
discounts.
stipend or whatever, like some kind of a discount if you go buy them from
Would
them.
you rather that the company provided those boots
No, I
free of
didn't
charge?
mind- I didn't mind purchasing them.
Okay, you don't think they should have to be made?
No.
Because someone could say, I can't afford them. What would you say to that person?
I would say, I don't know.
The cost
Tough
of
luck.
having this job,
Yeah,
I mean, you just
yeah.
have to.
It's part of the uniform. Steel-toe shoes would be part of
Right.
the uniform.
It's like a
Yes.
carpenter buying the tools for his trade,
Okay, good. Could be like that. Okay, let's move on to the next case. Darby. Darby, you should know, overrules Dagenhart. Darby is a very famous case, it's a very long case. I don't want to get too far into the details, but Darby actually is a case that has things that I think we all can identify with. Here's what Darby says. In the 1930s, you had the Progressive era, and the Progressives were interested in passing all of these workplace safety, working conditions laws. Because there were places in the 1920s and 30s that did not care much about working conditions and workplace safety. And there were some tough working conditions, no doubt about it. And there were places in which workers did not make very much money and worked long hours. Okay. So something that you should know called the Fair Labor Standards Act is passed. The Fair Labor Standards Act. Now, by using the word fair, I guess there's something called unfair labor. And so what they're appealing to is there's some basic things that every employer should have to do. Okay. And the purpose of the act was to exclude from interstate commerce goods produced by places, by companies that did not maintain the minimum standards of living necessary for health and well-being. I'll have to ask what that is, but the minimum standards necessary for health and well-being. So there were some companies that were not doing this. Now, one of the things that this act is about, I'll just tell you, is the regulation of wages. Okay, write that down, regulation of wages. Should the federal government be able to tell private businesses how much they have to pay people? Or at least what the minimum amount per hour, let's say, they have to pay people? These are private companies. So what a federal minimum wage job does, or says, law says, is that if you're a private company, and it applies to most private companies, not all of them, but most of them, there are exceptions, but you have to pay your workers no less than, what is it now, $7.25 an hour. Now, it doesn't matter if you could find people who are willing to work for $5 an hour. Maybe you're willing to work for $5 an hour. Maybe you don't have a job. Maybe you're willing to. I say, I'll pay you $5 an hour. And you say, sure, you'd like more, but you're willing to take it because that's better than $0 an hour, which is what you're making now. Right? The federal minimum wage law says that he and I, we cannot engage in that private deal. He does not get to work for me at $5 an hour. Even if I'm willing to pay him $5 an hour, and he's willing to take $5 an hour. because somehow it's reasoned that $5 an hour is just simply unfair, even though it may be voluntary. I want you to think about this. Now, it may be that if I tried to open a car wash in town, I tried to pay people $3 an hour, what would happen? Nobody would come work for me. So I might have to raise my wages based on the demand. Now, maybe I could find some people who will work for those wages. But the way it used to be is that people would get paid the market rate. The market would decide. And if you had a skill that was valuable, you get paid more than if you had a skill that a lot of people could do. Obviously, pushing a broom may be less valuable than if you were an electrician. You might value that skill higher. Not that it's sold, pushing a broom. I'm just saying that electricians might require more training than a janitor. That makes sense. They get paid more. But in the progressive era, they had these wage restrictions. They also had, you should note, hour restrictions, that there were limits on how many hours you could work. I want you to work 14 hours a day. Do you agree? Yeah, I'll do it. You're thinking 14 hours a day, that's $5 an hour, that's $90 a day. You're making, now that doesn't sound like a lot, but you're making nothing now. Wife and kid at home? Okay, I mean, so, but the federal government also says, I can't work you 14 hours a day. There is a maximum of 8 hours a day, and if you want to work beyond that, then I got to pay you, what? Overtime, which is time and a half. I may not want to pay time and a half for what you do. I may just say, well, I'll just schedule you 40 hours a week. You could have made more if there was no law. You'd be working a lot. You might be miserable, and who wants to work 14 hours a day, but you'd be making more. See, so I mean, this is what I'm talking about. So I'm trying to give sort of the other side. Everyone seems to sort of just assume minimum wages are good, hour requirements are good, and I understand these things can be abused. And I don't want people making $2 an hour and living in poverty. No, of course not. But I got to tell you, and you can look too, you can see if you agree. Sometimes these minimum wage laws actually hurt the poor. What? Hurt the poor? How could a minimum wage law hurt the poor? What would the argument be? Yes?
They don't have education.
Right, but how? I mean, how is a law saying that I have to pay $7 an hour? How could that hurt poor people? Or how could that hurt workers? We all think it's great for workers. Wow, $7 an hour, that's awesome. Better than making $4 an hour. This is a workers' rights bill. Minimum wage is great for workers. Well, is it necessarily? Yeah.
Since they're being forced to pay more, they're less likely to hire you for extended hours.
Yeah, I may hire fewer people. I might have hired 10 people at $4 an hour, but I can only hire 5 people because I got to pay $7 an hour. So now 5 people aren't making any money. Now, 5 of them are making less, no doubt about that. But I just want to throw that argument out there. We don't really argue this anymore because we have just assumed that minimum wage is good. And then we debate about how much we should pay. What is it now? $7.25. When I was back in the day, I went to work at McDonald's during my 3-year tenure. I was really good at the grill, muffins, lots of good bread. That was easy to make, just the grill. Anyway, I spent $4.25 an hour. $4.25.
What year was that?
Nothing. But of course, things were cheaper back then too. When you raise wages, people tend to raise what they charge for things. So, back in my day, I mean, that was 25 cents. What is it now for a pack of Big Red?
$1 something.
Ridiculous. Good.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, even when I started working when I was 16, like 6 years ago, the minimum wage was $5.75 or something, and it's still like in the $5 range, so it's
Yeah,
gone up a lot in the past.
They really hurt waitresses too, because they give you like, what is it, $3 an hour? But it's a tip
But the tips
profession,
are taxed.
so they assume you're going to make at least, whatever you make in tips in an hour will be above the minimum wage. That's cold.
They only make,
I gotta tell you.
they only make $2.13 an hour.
Is it $2.13? But you should get more than, I guess, $5 an hour in tips unless you're.
Real
Unless
bad.
it's really slow, though.
Yeah, it depends on,
Plus
unless, you have to be
boys
like
make
at a pretty big, restaurant, it can't be like a,
Yeah.
If you
Anyway.
don't get your tips to make enough minimum wage, they're supposed to cover the
They
rest.
compensate
But
those.
restaurants never do.
Oh, they don't?
Okay, picture.
Not as
Sometimes.
few, so they don't.
You give me the address of these places, like, really? So anyway, I just wanted to make that point while we're talking about, now this case, US v. Darby, though, the court disagrees with what I've been saying, and rules, you should know this, rules in favor of the federal government, and basically overrules what they said in Hammer v. Dagenhart. They say, you know what, Congress does have the power to regulate these things. And in fact, it specifically mentions Dagenhart. On the second page, it says here, these principles of constitutional interpretation would be settled if it weren't for that stupid court case 22 years ago in Dagenhart over the powerful dissent of Justice Holmes. So they criticize Dagenhart. They say, Dagenhart, no, child labor, was that the issue in that case? In this case, it's wage and hour restrictions. The more libertarian view of this is that not only are wage and hour restrictions bad for employers because they have to pay more, the libertarians say they're actually bad for workers too, at the end of the day. It sounds like it'd be good for workers, but, and there certainly should be basic safety and so on, but a lot of times, the libertarian wants to say the worker can decide how many hours is too much. He wants to work. So what happens a lot of times is you want to work 14 hours, you'll take 2 jobs instead. That's what you'll have to do. You'll work your 16 hours, you'll just do it with 2 different employers rather than just one, which would be easier for you, I'm guessing, not to go to some new place, So that's what, I knew a guy at McDonald's who would get up at 6, work till 2, then go work 3 to 11 at the other McDonald's. But they wouldn't let him work at the same McDonald's all day. He had to get in his car and drive to the other one. So, you can do that.
There's loopholes
Yeah,
when you're
and
salaried.
there might be.
When you're a salaried employee.
Yeah, now salaried employees, then there's still things, there's still limits, but generally you can work salaried employees sort of as much as you want, but within reason. There are certain things you
Well, within reason.
yeah, whatever the reason.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
Well, wouldn't it be fair to argue then that in places who don't have these regulations, their employees and workers are abused and taken advantage of?
yeah, what do you think? You think that? Is that?
I think
the
it's more
case?
liable to happen in a place with less regulation
Yeah.
than it is to happen in a place with more regulation.
Yeah. So if we had,
Like
if
in
we had,
China or in some other places like third
Yeah.
world countries where there's less regulation.
Yeah, so the argument would be if we had no regulations and you worked for me and I didn't treat you very well, the only argument there would be is if you could go work for somebody else who did treat their workers better. And then that guy in the other factory would get some of my best workers.
Mhm.
Now, maybe only the best workers would have a choice. Now, the sort of weak workers, if they're not good at their jobs, they might have to take what they can get. But if you're good at your job, I'm motivated to keep you. So I'm going to treat you to a certain degree, whatever we agree. So, now the question is, does that work?
Well,
That's
then
the
what would be
question.
good and bad would be kind of relative to,
Yeah.
like, I'll pay you $2 an hour rather than 1 because you're good.
Well,
But that's still below,
I'm going to pay you below what, though?
well, I guess, yeah, I guess.
Below
that's true.
some arbitrary standard of what's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
It's 7, why not 10? Why not $10 an hour? Why not 15?
Well, states have to
And the
regulate
states
their
have
own
their
minimum
own.
wage.
Yeah, and the state wages range from, I was looking,
Like Oregon's $8.80, right?
yeah, some states are higher. Usually the more progressive states are going to be a little higher. California's higher.
It depends on the economy too, right, and the standard of living, like,
It
Cost of
does.
living,
So
yeah.
880 in Oregon is not 880 in New York City. It doesn't buy the same.
right.
So, and that's the other problem with minimum wage is that, well, yeah, $7.25 is not the same in all states, or what it can buy. That may be not very much at all in New York City, but it might be huge salary in Nebraska. I mean, as far as what it can buy. I mean, that might be like $10. I mean, I don't know what exactly would be, but, so anyway, but Darby says, and you bring up a good point about abuse, and you know, certainly that is a concern. And how do we, is this the way to go at that concern? That'd be the question. If there's only one factory in your town, then yeah, you're going to be stuck with whatever that person, you know, pays you and does. No doubt about that. Okay, so Darby overrules. And here's what, at the bottom of page 79, the bottom of that first page, here's what the court says. Its motive or purpose is regulation of wages and hours of person. So people objected that this isn't really commerce. This isn't really trade and transportation. Now what you're doing is you're regulating what the employer has to pay his worker, and that's supposed to be a private contract, a private agreement. Why is the government in the middle of that at all? But Darby says, the court says, that is commerce. What you pay your workers and how long you work your workers is part of the regulation of commerce that Congress gets to do. The states were always able to do that. The states have always been able to make laws about that. But now the federal government gets to step in. And now we get things like the federal minimum wage, we get overtime requirements, we get requirements about how much you have to pay somebody who works on Sunday. We have all these rules now. How long, I think at McDonald's when I was there, you were required to give people a half-hour break if they worked over a certain amount of hours, and you give them 2 10 minutes. There are all these rules about all the things you have to do. So,
where was that last thing?
That was at the bottom of page 79, which is the bottom of the first page of the case. It is said that the present prohibition does not fall within the scope of commerce. However, it does, the court says. It does. Here, the court gives sort of the old view. The old view was, well, in general, Congress can regulate, say, noxious articles or dangerous goods, stolen articles. Certainly, Congress can say you can't sell stolen goods. And then certain things like liquor. But now they're going to expand that definition to the private contract. This case is huge, everybody. This case is revolutionary, this Darby case. U.S. v. Darby. But tell your friends about it. The little t-shirts that say Darby. I love the names of cases. I don't know why. U.S. v. Darby. The Darby law. Okay. Congress, following its own conception of public policy concerning restrictions which may be imposed on interstate commerce. And they decided that this would be injurious to the public health, morals, or welfare. So Congress can now regulate the public health, the morals, and welfare of any state. That's huge. This sounds a lot like the health care bill, doesn't it? No doubt, and I've said this over and over again, I do not question the motives of Democrats and liberals in passing the health care bill. I think their motives are honest and noble. Absolutely. I think anyone should say that. Don't need to be cynical. I think President Obama cares about sick people. I think he cares about people with cancer. It's a very noble law. The only question I have, and I'm still thinking about it, I'm not quite settled yet. Well, kind of settled, but not really, is whether it's constitutional. Now, I'm also dubious of whether it's actually going to lower costs. We'll have to see. If it passes, I hope it does. I certainly hope it works if it's upheld. I don't want it to fail and everyone to die. No, of course not. But I am skeptical. I think I'm skeptical about the policy, and I'm skeptical about the constitutionality, but those are different questions. Here the court is saying, make no mistake, the court is saying that Congress has the power to regulate the things injurious to the public health, morals, or welfare. That used to be, by the way, the state's job, public health, morals, and welfare. The states would decide what they would need to do. Now the U.S. Congress is going to step into the conversation. That is a big win for the federal government. Darby. Big win.
That's pretty much giving them power to do really whatever they want, kind of.
Someone said that. Anything they want. Who wrote that?
Me.
Smiley face.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll take it.
And let me go down to the bottom of page 80. This is the phrase you should know. The power of Congress to regulate interstate commerce. This is the bottom of page 80. Okay? This is something that Chairman Inskeep kept saying on that video. Power to regulate interstate commerce extends to the regulation of activities which have a substantial effect, circle substantial effect, on the commerce or the exercise of the congressional power. Substantial effect is kind of a vague term. As long as you can show it has something to do with commerce or the economy, that's good enough for it to be upheld. That's what substantial effect means. It's a very vague term. And this is, I think, the first case where it appears. You heard that a lot from the president's lawyer, Borelli, in the oral arguments. He kept saying, as long as it has a substantial effect. He gets that from Darby. This is the case where he gets that from. Darby says that. Okay. Next paragraph. And if Congress chooses a method, so we want to get rid of worker abuse, workers being abused, getting paid wages that are too low. Well, let's have minimum wage. And as long as the means are reasonably adapted, they say. This is at the top of page 81. Reasonably adapted. As long as it's reasonable, then go ahead and do it. There are other ways to bring up wages. You could encourage more factories to be built, and maybe the factories would compete for the workers. You could do that. You could offer, government could offer education classes where workers could improve their skills and then try and get higher paying jobs because they're better workers. There's lots of ways to, I mean, any of you, there's lots of ways to increase how much money you can make in this world. You're doing it right now, obviously, coming to class and getting a degree, because one of the reasons is, you've been told, that that will allow you to get higher paying jobs. Many of you also love learning and would do this for free. But if you had no benefit, learning is enough. But, you know, many of you, but I mean, so we know that. I mean, all of you are going to try to have your kids get as educated as they can, because you know that education translates into earning power. We all know this. There are lots of things you can do. So anyway, that's what's, I'm trying to lay this out. This is fascinating to me. I hope you guys, I know it's on the cusp of the weekend, can't wait to go. Should we let you go early today?
Yeah.
No. But let's go to the last paragraph of, now, remember our 10th Amendment discussion? I love this paragraph in Darby. Our conclusion is unaffected by the 10th Amendment. Unaffected. We don't think the 10th Amendment really has any relevancy in this case. Remember the 10th Amendment, which says what? What did it say? Remember I played the video, the guy made fun of it? What was the point of the 10th Amendment? Someone help me.
The power is not delegated to the federal government, it is delegated to the state.
That's right. That the powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the state. Darby doesn't really care about that. He doesn't really think that that's because one of the lawyers in this case for the state said, well, what about the 10th Amendment? We're supposed to control wage and hour restrictions, not the federal government. And they said, that doesn't really apply. Sorry. And the 10th Amendment is rarely used because the courts rarely give it much attention. I mean, it's kind of vague, and the court's more concerned with the Commerce Clause and general welfare. It's hard to find cases that even depend on the 10th Amendment. it's one of the forgotten amendments. Like the 19th Amendment, but anyway. Okay, let's go to the next case. I love this stuff. Wickard v. Filburn, bottom of page 83. We've heard something about this case already. Bottom of page 83. That doesn't have, that just has it right here. Wickard v. Filburn. Not only can we fix the wage and hour restrictions of what you do, we can also control how much you make, as far as how much product you actually physically make. Remember, this is the wheat case. Wickard v. Filburn, 1942. The Agricultural Adjustment Act. The federal government fined Mr. Filburn for producing 239 bushels of wheat in excess of what he was allowed to produce. Sorry, he got penalized by the federal government. Had to pay a fine based on the Agricultural Adjustment Act. Filburn's practice was to plant a small acreage of wheat, sell some, feed some to livestock, and use some for his home-consumed flour and for seed. Bottom of the second paragraph. The court says that even if Filburn's activity be local, even if it's a local activity, and though it may not be regarded as commerce, it's not commerce, even though it's local and it's not commerce, it may still be reached by Congress. Just think, what did he just say? He just said, remember Gibbons? What did we say about local in Gibbons? Gibbons said it doesn't reach local matters. Gibbons said that. Well, now, even if the activity is, the court says the activity is local, it's not interstate. It's not interstate. The Congress has the power to regulate interstate commerce.
That's not even regarded as
So
commerce.
it's not interstate because it says it's local, and then it says it's not commerce. Oh, wait a minute. Well, what? Because look what it says here. This is remember why that substantial economic effect. Where'd they get that from? That's from Darby. Substantial effect. Remember we said that in Darby. So these cases, they build on each other. And if you're a big Supreme Court geek like myself, you track all these cases and they're always talking to each other, and I've got big charts and so on. In my basement where I have the tied up, no, I'm just kidding. The tied up in my basement. You can imagine. No, I'm just kidding.
It's all good.
Yes, I'm kidding. All right, but look, this wasn't the case that I think, what's the guy's name again? I just forgot his name. Varelli? Yeah, the President Obama's lawyer, he relied on Wickard quite a bit. He mentioned it a bunch of times. And you can see why. Look what it says. It says, even if the activity is local, even if it's not really commerce, it may still, whatever its nature, be reached by Congress if it exerts a substantial effect on interstate commerce. And so we talk about the wheat industry now. We got this industry of wheat. All these farmers are making wheat, and they want to get paid for it. And it is a public policy problem. The public policy problem is there are a whole bunch of farmers that aren't able to make ends meet. And the government wants to make it so they can make their wheat and sell it for more money. That's what they want. All these farmers, they're going bankrupt, they're foreclosing. It's a rough time for farmers in 1942. And there are a lot more farmers then than there are now. So Congress wants to help out. They got this noble purpose. Okay, help us out. Help us raise the price of wheat. How do you do that? Well, let's limit the supply. Bottom paragraph of that page. The maintenance by government of regulation of a price for wheat undoubtedly can be accomplished by sustaining or increasing the demand as by limiting the supply. So you can raise prices one of two ways. You can increase the demand for something. Everybody wants an iPhone. So when the new iPhone comes out and they got lines around the block, Apple can charge the $400 or $200, whatever it charges. I'm sure it could even charge more if it wanted to. Or you could decrease the supply. We'll just limit the number of things, and then it becomes more special to have one. The effect of the statute is to restrict the amount which may be produced for the market. And then again, look here. It quotes Darby again. There's Darby right there. Darby's everywhere. All right. I love that. I love when the cases quote each other, and we've already read the previous case. Don't you like that? Don't you feel smart? No, you don't care.
Makes me mad.
It makes you mad. Yeah, you should be mad. Top of paragraph 85. It is well established by the decisions of this court that the power to regulate commerce includes the power to regulate the prices at which commodities in that commerce are dealt. So, transportation, wages, hours, prices, health insurance. Wow. So another big win for the federal government. Woo! I'm trying to make this fun, but you know, talking about the common law. Well, look at that. We got a little chart, the scores, Gibbons, Darby's. And notice the power gets bigger each time. Gibbons would never have upheld, the court in Gibbons would never have upheld the Wicker decision. But now let's go to one of my favorite cases.
So do you really think that would make people exercise if healthcare gets passed? Do you really think?
I think at some point, yeah, absolutely. Which may be good for a lot of people.
No, I'm not saying it's not.
That's
I'm
still
just
going
saying
to be an
that I can
infringement
see
on
how-
liberty. I could certainly exercise more, no doubt. I don't know if I want the government to force me to do it, but okay. I mean, again, positive effects aside, you have this. I mean, how much liberty do you want? I mean, we can make people do all sorts of things that are good for them.
Well, it seems like they can. Looking at all this. seems
Not
like
yet.
they can.
We're not there yet. This law will probably not be upheld, this healthcare law, but we're not there yet. But I'm just showing you the direction we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people like this stuff. I don't think it's better. Working conditions are better. People make more. I
The
mean,
government loves it.
Of course, government loves it. All right, next case. We'll probably have to give you the details on this case. The next case is Heart of Atlanta. Very famous case. So the question is, Heart of Atlanta Motel versus the United States. I'll give you a teaser for next time. So you've regulated my hours. You've regulated the prices. You've regulated how much I can produce. Can you now tell me with whom I have to do business? Can you now tell me that I have to serve a group of people I don't want to serve? Do I have the right to refuse service to anybody I want, even if my refusal is based on something as dickish as race? Do you get to tell me that I have to serve black people in my restaurant? Or Jewish people? Or Asians? Or is it my hotel? And is it my restaurant? And maybe I live in a town where nobody's going to care if I don't serve a minority, because they're all racist too. So one motivation to serve minorities might be, well, if you don't, everyone's going to call you a racist and you go out of business. I mean, that could happen. Public opinion could go against you. People find out that you're not serving a certain minority. In some places, you'd go out of business. But let's say this is not one of those places. Let's say this is, one of these other places. So what this case is about, and it's a very important case, is the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And let me just say up front, I think it is immoral to distinguish on the basis of race who you serve in a restaurant. Let me just say that up front. I think that's wrong. I don't want people saying, "This guy is a racist." I'm an American Indian. You're all on my land. I'm not a racist. All right, I'm just kidding. But I'm an American Indian. But what I'm asking, though, or what Heart of Atlanta asks, is should it be illegal to be a racist in that way? It's your restaurant. Should you have the legal right to decide that you're going to have an all-white restaurant? Now, again, most of us would say that's an immoral, horrible thing to do. But do you also want to say it should be illegal? That's a different question. That's a tough question. Heart of Atlanta is about that. And the court is going to say, well, is going to rule on the decision, are we going to, this hotel owner in the Heart of Atlanta motel did not want to rent rooms to black people. He wasn't the only one, there were many who didn't want to. He may have actually thought he would lose business if he would do that. Because there might be some people who wouldn't stay at that hotel if it was integrated. So he may have been a racist, which I assume he was, but he may have also been making a business decision. Ooh, what do you do? What does the court do? Well, we'll find out next time. Okay. Oh, you can read the case. I will put up more readings that you should bring with you. We'll talk about women in the family next unit. Make sure you print them out. We'll be talking about many things. Exciting stuff. Have a good vacation. Right, anything? How you doing today? Oh, another hour, isn't it? Man, that was tough. I'm going to reconsider that. Leave the questions with someone.